viewers, today we shall study an interesting novel written by Manohar Malgonkar titled A Bend in the Ganges. It is an interesting novel and a cleverly crafted piece of literature. Adequate background knowledge of the author is necessary to appreciate the nuances of the novel. Manohar Malgonkar is one of India's prominent writers who found an admirable place on the canvas of Indian writing in English. He was born in 1912 and was educated in Bombay, where he graduated in English and Sanskrit. Manohar's lineage indicated that he belonged to the royal blood with his family tree in Goa. After graduation, he went to become a passionate hunter and is believed to have shot 8 tigers. Soon, he distanced himself away from the dangerous and inhuman sport and became an ardent conservationist of wildlife. He was part of counter-espionage department and was a member of the general staff in Indian Army. He moved away from the army life after the Second World War and soon took strong liking to writing. He owned and operated manganese mines near Jagalpet. He was an active member of Swayamprabha party. He contested from parliament twice in the 1970s but failed. These were the tumultuous years in Indian history that provided the milieu for some of his works. Though he experimented in politics, he displayed his passion for writing. The first novel, Distant Drums, took shape when he was 47 years old. The book caught the attention of the literary world and the reviews were encouraging as Manohar made good use of his army experience in writing the book. The book highlights the patriotic fervour and the spirit of the Indian soldier, and many consider Distant Drum as an epitaph for the British Indian Army. Malgonkar contributed 5 novels in English. They are Distant Drums, Combat of Shadows, The Princess, A Bend in the Ganges, and The Devil's Wind. He also wrote a lot of non-fiction works that included The Sea Hawk, Life and Battles of Kanoji Angre, Puars of Devas Senior, and Chhatrapatis of Kolhapur. He also wrote a highly valid account of the assassination of Gandhi in the book The Men Who Killed Gandhi. For many years, Malgonkar contributed to a weekly column with his perspectives on vast range of topics which were published in Indian newspapers like The Statesman and Deccan Herald. He was also known in the film world and wrote scripts for movies, also wrote short stories and many newspaper articles. Manohar Malgonkar died 16th June at Jagalpet in Karnataka's Uttara Kannada district. He was 97 when he died. The last Indian writer on the Indian literary arena who could connect his readers with the British Raj made an exit from this mortal world. It was a huge loss to Indian literary world. A Bend in the Ganges is an epic narrative of the decade which paints the gory picture of partition and the forces which engineered shook the very base, pushing modern India to its nadir, where over 3 million people died, over 1 million women were raped, abducted and mutilated, and several million rendered helpless refugees, left to fend for themselves in the quagmire of post-partition existence teeming with poverty, disease and death. Malgonkar deals with the delicate and knotty issue of the seemingly sudden change which depicted Indian nationalism versus British colonialism. British colonialism leading to a direct Hindu-Muslim conflict which paved way for the partition of India. Malgonkar brilliantly and bravely captures the ghastly developments resulting in the wake of partition. The gory screams of the victims, the barbarous treatment meted out to men and women in specific being carried away naked, struggling to escape from the shackles of slavery filled the air. The novel mainly highlights the various phases of transformation of three young men, Gyan Talwar, Debi Dayal and Shafi Usman, as a result of their participation in the events of the years preceding and following the partition of India. These freedom fighters from the Hanuman Club openly abhorred the Gandhian violence and displayed the streak of terrorism. Dissatisfied with Gandhian non-violence, they promote a new religion of brotherhood as they determinedly believed that religious differences among the Indians contribute to their slavery. The tale shows the timeline of the decade prior to partition in a small town of West Punjab. The story begins with the introduction of Debi Dayal, who is son of Tek Chand, an Indian cement tycoon. He is an honest individual, loyal to the British government and has a casual attitude towards the plight of the nation. He has a strong aesthetic sense and is a passionate lover of arts and takes pride in an exquisite collection of ancient Hindu artifacts. His beautiful wife and Debi's mother share an equally blissful relationship with their daughter Sundari, who is indeed as beautiful and charming as her simple name implies. As the story progresses, Debi opts for the dangerous path of adopting armed revolution to liberate his motherland from the shackles of slavery. Debi Dayal associates himself with a revolutionary organization led by Shafi, who is known for crafty and scheming mind. He plays a vital role in designing violent activities of the gang, but he is also quick to realize that his own leadership could be questioned. Being an opportunist, Shafi betrays 9 Hindu colleagues. Debi Dayal is sentenced to a lifetime imprisonment term in the Andamans. This story is brilliantly set up, which portrays the gradual evolution of the character of Gyan, the story's villain, and arrival of Debi Dayal. The novel beautifully aids the readers to follow the fortunes of Gyan and also read further that a family feud leads to the murder of Hari, who despite the court order loses his land and in a violent squabble is murdered. Gyan is also sentenced with the dreaded D ticket to Andamans, where he happens to encounter Debi Dayal. The Andamans throw a new challenge for both, to which both of them respond in a different way. Debi Dayal, a man of high esteem, self-esteem, prefers death to a humiliating death in the island jail. Gyan, through his strong sense of commitment to work, becomes an important aid for the warden and is promised of a parole within 3 years, after which he is allowed to marry a native of Andaman and live in the colonies forever. But Debi Dayal's stubborn propositions and actions lead him to trouble, especially with the Indian officers. His obstinate spirit attempts a jailbreak, but in a moment of weakness, Gyan betrays him and Debi Dayal's body is assaulted and Gyan is filled with a strong sense of guilt. Gyan, meanwhile, returns to East Punjab, meets Debi Dayal's father, introduces himself as his son's friend, finds a job in Bombay where the situations connive to fulfill his young romantic dream of earning the love of Sundari. When communal riots blazed after the Khilafat movement or non-cooperation movement, especially in Mopla, where Hindu landlords were being annihilated and their daughters and wives were raped and mutilated, and Gandhi became a silent spectator to all these events of the barbaric acts. Debi Dayal is disturbed at the turn of events and questions his friend Basu, the Bengali revolutionary who was also caught in Shafi's conspiracy. Was Gandhi himself not responsible for the emasculation of the Hindu race? Basu is a part of the Hindu Mahasabha, an organization shaped as a reaction to the communal policy of Jinnah Muslim League. Basu's wife is the victim of an acid attack from a Muslim mob. Devi Dayal's violent side is highlighted, where he decides to teach Shafi a lesson. Devi Dayal is not interested in women, but Mumtaz, with her dogged devotion, wins his love and affection and wins his heart. He opts to marry her and discloses it to her sister Sundari, who easily accepts her. On the eve of independence, Devi's father is trapped with his wife and Sundari, who have come over. Mumtaz is brutally gang raped and murdered in front of his eyes as he lays dying. Meanwhile, Shafi confidently escapes to Pakistan. As the violence reaches a climax, Shafi targets Devi Dayal and his family, vowing to take Sundari in exchange for Mumtaz. But it is the anti-hero Gyan, who is in search of salvation, is led into the terror-torn Punjab to save the women he had always loved and longed for. Manohar Malgonkar left an indelible mark on the fascinating canvas of Indian writing in English. The Indian literary world takes pride in announcing that he was the man who did the Indian army proud through his books. Malgonkar has intensely analyzed the intricacies of the life, the time and the history, and at the same time he placed Gandhi's basic tenets like Satya and Ahimsa on the pedestal of political ideology in a fictional mode very carefully, without hurting the sentiments of Gandhian scholars and followers. Art emerges from subtle and involute tension between the remembered and the real, the potential and the actual, integration and disposition. This is rather a maxim for all Indian writers and especially for Malgonkar. He begins his novel with the account of Gandhi's basic principles, namely truth, non-violence and Swadeshi and dignity of labour. We watch a scene where the mob is instigated to shun foreign goods and destroy them in fire. Devi, Shafi and Basu are the important characters portrayed by Malgonkar. Devi is the personification of all Gandhian principles. He has a high sense of sacrifice and commitment, who can endure suffering for long, high sense of shrewdness, strong belief in Hindus and Muslims, belief in piety of love and not in the purity of the body. The incidents like killing of a pup, a soldier's attempt to rape his mother, resorted him to violence against colonial injustice. Further, the story proceeds with the scathing attack on Gandhi's ideal of non-violence in the presence of Gandhi's follower. The follower believes in Gandhi just because even Nehru has become his disciple. Shafi Usman, a character, said, "Non-violence is the philosophy of sheep. Creed for cowards, it is the greatest danger to this country." The writer has portrayed this particular concept beautifully in his novel. The struggle for India's freedom had a different color altogether when compared to the spirit of India's politically correct history texts. They were not restricted to the arena of Mahatma Gandhi and a symbolic cap which adorned the heads of his followers, advocating and teaching state-of-art of charkha and anti-modernism to the masses of free India. The ideas of revolution were never unfamiliar to the Indians, although the lack of a critical mass led to their helplessness to face a chain reaction. And unfortunately, this concluded into a high explosion. Scores of Indian revolutionaries from all quarters of life in those days when India was struggling for freedom lived, dreamed and died for the noble cause of Indian Swaraj. But Gandhi's abhorrence to violence and his lofty presence and authority over the inertial, ignorant masses and thereby their opinion meant that the majority of the revolutionaries would be categorized as imprudent patriots to endorse his understanding of ahimsa. Malgonkar's approach to ahimsa is a subtle blend of resisting non-violence as an ultimate truth in every context, and embracing it as a lofty ideal for humanity was to be achieved yet. Malgonkar sketches the characters of his novel Debi, Shafi and Gyan in the distant streams of philosophical, moral and political thoughts that were omnipresent during the independence struggle. Omnipresent in the sense they were present in every heart. This was omnipresent during the Indian struggle, especially after the arrival of Gandhi. Arrival of Gandhi intensified this movement and the feeling. Devi symbolizes the high principles and ideas of radical groups who trust in leadership by example, sacrifice and commitment. These three traits were very, very important and significant. On the other hand, Shafi signifies the nationalist and patriotic leadership of Muslims who later on became separatists. Gyan represents those who are hypocritic and gruesome, unprincipled and parasitic in nature, but they believe in Gandhi just because only he can bring freedom in India. Gyan's evolution in the novel typically represents the Gandhian followers. Gyan's effort of fighting against his irrational and erratic impulse to offer his coat to the fire, drinking beer in slow sips in picnic, to become a spectator to the cold murder of his elder brother as coward, exposes faulty and weak personality. He kills his brother's murderer with the same axe, thus exposing his demonic streak. He also shows his hatred openly towards Tukaram for his so-called deceit. He himself was a swindler in Mulligan of Andaman. He also troubled Devi by demanding money and the photograph of Sundari and her husband. He stoops down further by tearing the photograph and separate Gopal's picture from it. He collects gold coins from Khobri of Ghasita and sells the gold coins, and also lies about his relationship with Devi and wins the emotional proximity of Sundari. These instances expose Gyan's deceitful thought process and personality completely. The theme thus highlights violence that shattered the lives of ordinary men and women and in the lives of three brilliantly depicted central characters: Gyan, a follower of Gandhi; Devi Dayal, an ardent hedonist and a terrorist; and Devi Dayal's sister Sundari, a cruel woman who holds nothing revered and is in half love with her own brother, which is sinful and heinous. The characters of the novel take shape in such a way that they represent intricate and knotty facts of human life. The gradual progress in the growth of his characters helps the reader to appreciate the style of the writer while sketching and presenting the characters to them. The growth of his characters, Gyan, Debi, Shafi, Kiran, Henry, exhibiting good and bad qualities, tells us that nobody is innately good or bad. He is mindful of the presence of both qualities in one and the same person. The good often becomes bad by the disparaging acts of others. The writer is convinced that there is violence primarily in every man or every heart. It is the purifying experiences in life chisels one to become a refined human being. Malgonkar presents an India that could not rise above the limitations of violence to reach pinnacle of non-violence. He portrays the inner strain in the freedom movement through the interpersonal relationship of Gyan, Debi and Shafi, In almost all the novels of Manohar Malgonkar, violence becomes a dominating theme, as the road to freedom, according to his picture, is soaked in blood. The reasons for Hindu-Muslim discord, as he portrays, are more political and economic than religious. Ram Gopal says it was not religion but the political and the economic disparities between the two communities that resulted in religious fanaticism. He further clarifies that the Hindus, being more educated, got government jobs, and they happened to be leading in the land of aristocracy and the world of commerce. This can be seen in the Bend, where Tek Chand Debi's father is an industrialist, but Shafi belongs to a poor family and is always hard pressed for money. As a novelist, Malgonkar has portrayed the subtle intricacies and contradictions in human lives. What he yearns to produce is the element of consciousness of common humanity. One of his primary concerns seems to be to probe into peace and hostility, and to see how far they can take people in their relationships with one another. He shows that enmity can never be good to the society. Amity or peace alone can help, and enmity only hinders the beauty of human life, is a maxim he stresses again and again throughout his novel. Thus, the complex nature of human relationships, sexual, familial, racial and other social ones, seems to have enthralled this novelist of Indian life. He has creatively portrayed this with loyalty to psychology and sociology. He has presented Indian history and consciousness, which is intelligible to us, in a more vibrant and striking manner. The image of India that he presents is vividly memorable. The greatest aspect of this fiction is the absolute value of human relationships accomplished through love. Malgonkar admits that as an individual, one may adhere to complete non-violence, as we find in Debi's confidence in Gandhi. Malgonkar brilliantly sketched the character of Debi Dayal, an optimistic protagonist. Personally, I don't think he would retaliate with violence. In his reply to Basu's question, would you remain non-violent if someone threw acid at the girl you loved? Would Gandhi? But when one wishes to have its total acceptance at all the levels, then one will have to consider the values of Hafiz Khan, Ghasita, the big house of Khonseth, the rapist soldier, as well as the state and the ignorance of Shafi Usman, Balban Bahadur, the Indian brigadier in Burma, and also the helplessness of Tukaram and Sundari, and many more features. It's an interesting study of different moods of human mind. All virtues of Gandhism are quite visible in his highly translucent character Debi. This novel reveals a sound historical sense and experiments in artistically bringing together the personal and the historical viewpoint in fictional terms. Malgonkar's effort is highly evocative in presenting Debi Dayal's character, as he can only be a laudable and true disciple of Gandhi. It is not so surprising to find that when Gandhi feels dejected, and just before independence in June 1947, he says, "I ask nobody to follow me. Everyone should follow his or her own inner voice." Debi Dayal embraces non-violence like Gandhi, and he is also assassinated like Gandhi. Debi's death is unlike Shafi's during partition. Malgonkar wants to convey that non-violence as a doctrine is innovative in nature. It cannot survive the assault of the mob until and unless the mob becomes mature and tolerant. Gandhi passed on his experiments with his non-violence at personal level, but his ideas are yet to become the greater vehicle of peace for humankind. People are yet to become peaceful. People are yet to become tolerant to understand his ideology. In Indian writing in English, Malgonkar established himself to be a forerunner to write about the problems of Gandhian thoughts and its relevance to the contemporary society. His characters continue to demonstrate the various shades of understanding Gandhi's life and attempts to practice Gandhi's principles in real life. The novel, A Bend in the Ganges, remains a classic one. It is one of the finest novels depicting the bloody picture and turbulent times of partition written till date. A fascinating narrative with a bold range of characters and their artistic blend into a revolutionary story which redefines the making of a nation and the mockery played amidst its tragedies. The writing is provocatively constituted yet aesthetically presented. The noted critic and writer K.R. Srinivas Iyengar concludes that the shame and agony of the partition, the glory and the defeat of the hour of freedom, the tryst with destiny that was also the death trap fashioned by the malignant time spirit, the horror and the humiliation, the terror and the pity of it, all are the themes of Malgonkar's novel. It is a bolder experiment in artistically fusing the personal and historical perspective in fictional terms. What a beautiful conclusion! What a beautiful summarization of this interesting novel. I hope you have felt the same. Thank you.